And we're good on the recording, so I guess we're ready to start. Let's start with a little bit with introductions here.
So,
Nice to see some familiar faces in the crowd. I see you there, Pat. Um, but for y'all who are going to be listening on the recording, I'm Warren, the lead community manager for our planet, and we also got Tillbilly here, also on the community team.
yeah. I'm joining from St Andrews up in Scotland. I'm an economics and management student. I've been working with our planet for a couple of months now. You guys might have seen me in our space, filling in for Blue for all of our news. But yeah, just starting to get a bit more involved in ETH again.
Yeah, we're trying to tackle a couple topics today on the informative side because I understand there's a lot of people with concerns about what the ETH merge means, what it possibly means for this project and as a whole. Because I mean, we were just talking before the stages started, Kieran, on some of the scams that have been running rampant about this whole thing.
Yeah, there's one of the big ones at the minute is a usual like phishing scam that's hey, move all of your ETH into this wallet and it'll turn it into ETH 2.0 for after the merge. You need to do this before the merge, etc., which is all nonsense. You don't need to move your ETH into any wallets. Don't trust anybody who's telling you to do that. Don't click on any suspicious links, etc. But all the short and long of this stage is just going to be that you don't need to do anything for the merge to have no effect on you.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, you should always be very skeptical about any kind of DM slash have your DMs just turned off in general. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive straight into it about this merge that's going to be happening.
Yeah, so we'll start off with like what the merge is in general because it's a bit on like the technical side. And if any of you guys don't understand like small bits and bobs, we presume most of you are pretty literate with this stuff. We're going to give a bunch of links in our space after this, and you can just click through, do a bit of research yourself. Um, yeah, Warren, if you want to start us off with like what's the ETH mainnet merging with, and what does it mean for like general use on the platform?
Well, here's the good news, right? If you are a normal user, you have some ETH, you have some NFTs stored, you're not going to be able to really notice anything like apparent, right? This is all just like they've quoted it as swapping out the engine mid-flight. Is that we're looking right now at a like very kind of almost like a gas guzzler because a lot of the concerns about ETH is that it consumes a ton of energy to do things, mostly because of the miners on the proof of work standpoint. And we're going into, if you don't know what proof of work is that's basically how the network verifies transactions and how it maintains security, right? This is done through miners that use tons and tons of GPUs, graphical processing units, graphics cards, to crunch numbers essentially to break the cryptographic bits on it, right? So once this problem is solved, then a new block is added onto the chain, and that's how all our transactions are verified. That's how everything stays secure, right? That's what we're currently on. And that's also
Yeah.
why the point that gamers typically are really mad about things, myself included, that because of this cross demand, we just want these graphics cards to play video games, and then you have miners coming in that increase the price upwards of 300, 500 something percent, right? Because I think you were trying to build a PC recently, yeah?
Yeah, I need it for university, so I've been looking into like getting the parts together because obviously you don't really want to go to like pre-build sites because you're either going to get like not enough thermal paste and your CPU is going to burn itself out, or you're going to get shoddy build quality or something like that. So I've been looking into building it myself, and just going through these GPU and power unit prices is just it's impossible. And what the movement away from proof of work is going to do is basically stop that inflation in the market totally. It will take a little bit of time for them to like increase supply again, like find the right limit, but it's just going to be a lot easier.
I mean, like since the height of it, I think I've seen like GPU prices drop significantly because it seems like the miners also believe that this is the end of proof of work. So what's that mean for like security in the future, right? We're going to be transitioning to proof of stake, right? So in
Yeah.
the most layman terms, as it is if you hold ETH at an X amount, well, this is also a misconception that we're going to clear up a little bit later, right? But ideally, to operate a node, you need about 32 ETH. You hold that, and then you become a validator for the network, right? And then the entirety of the network is made up of countless validators. So ideally, if you hold ETH, that's all you need to do to help secure the chain, and that's how it's going to process transactions. All that like heavy energy intensive work that's reliant on GPUs is going to be gone, right?
Yeah.
So
So what the big deal is these are two consensus mechanisms, and again, we're going to be dropping some links into our space if any of this jargon's a bit too much. But they're ways of making sure that all the blocks put onto the blockchain, all of the transactions are valid and honest. And what proof of stake does is you basically take a portion of the tokens, stick them up in a locked wallet, so you can't really move them around, and say, hey, if I place a falsified transaction onto the blockchain, I will lose all of this currency and it will be essentially destroyed. And that means that ETH doesn't have to issue any more tokens, which will stop devaluing tokens because like quantitative easing, etc. That's conventional economics. But it will also stop
well,
all that power.
not exactly stop. It's like a
Oh,
slow. It's a
stop.
slowing of issuance, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
because those reward blocks, they're not going to miners anymore because the miners don't exist, right?
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. And there will see pardon me, there will still be like a significant not significant, sorry, a very insignificant amount of proof of work going on the network, but it won't be anything like anywhere near what we've been seeing now. It's mainly just like lower level stuff from what I was reading about how the whole validation chain is going to move over. It's going to reduce it by 99.85% basically.
Yeah, a lot of
So
people are pretty much rounding up the 0.5. They're up to 99.
yeah,
But
it's very
that's
much.
good because like at least us at our planet are like one of our most principal rules here is that we want to look out for the planet because looking at it on the very broad term is that everything has a cost to it, right? And while the gains that we have gotten out of Web3 and building for a future and finding audiences for um, new products and new ideas has been wonderful, right? There has been a price that has to be paid because of this, and that's what comes out of mining. And you can look at it in a way as kind of a loan of sorts, right? And we've hit the point where we have to say that it's like we have to balance our books.
Yeah, exactly. There's also like an element of companies out there. They have like ESG mandates. They have to stay within like a certain level of energy usage, a certain level of like carbon particulates released,
Mm-hmm.
and by reducing the amount that moving into crypto presents, you actually also open the door for all of this mainstream adoption in the long run as well. And we've seen, if anybody's been paying attention to the new stuff I've been posting, there's interest from Nike, loads of like clothing brands now. They're starting to catch on to this metaverse aspect and create basically digital clothing, which looks pretty funky. If anybody wants to go and have a look at
Yeah,
the like
it's pretty
NFT
wild.
project.
I've seen a bit of it. But yeah, like let's be honest about this, right? Looking at the world is huge, the Twitter community, Instagram, and all that. What we create in this space is inspiring because some of the stories that we've been able to do. I remember Pat was telling me a long time ago about wiping out medical debt using like a Web3 project, right? And as much as we can, all the things that we want to do, right? These are all in good intention with the state of the network as it was on proof of work. There's always the counter argument is like, what about the planet? You're burning all these things. You're causing inflation on all these other things, and we've been able to keep on keeping on because the point is we know that we've been working towards this proof of stake, change.
Yeah, and that's why the whole project's like been delayed until after this merge. So that way by delaying it, we've basically done very, very little to have a huge environmental impact by just not contributing to the energy intensive proof of work model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's ideally to the point. What was the date again that this is supposedly
Um,
supposed to happen? Like rough
I think
estimate.
we're looking at like a soft confirmed date around like the 15th to 19th of September. So like literally just a couple of weeks away.
Oh,
Um,
so it's extremely close.
yeah, it's right near there. But obviously, like if the network, if their final test run through and it's all a disaster, they're going to put a delay on that. Luckily, so they've given like a soft deadline with wiggle room if they need it, which is honestly the best way of doing things to make sure that everyone's secure and nobody suddenly ends up with an empty wallet.
Mm-hmm. Which is also like to remember to the point is like proof of stake, which Ethereum is switching to, is also not the only method of consensus. Of course, we have proof of work that everyone's familiar with, that Bitcoin is from, that Ethereum is currently operating. Then we're rotating on over to proof of stake, right? But there's also a few other ones that we could see crop up in the future, not necessarily to Ethereum, right? But other ones are operating. I believe it was Chia that was like proof of time and space, right? Which is yeah, that is a thing. But essentially it's using like hard drives to do this point. It's a kind of like a mixture of proof of stake and also like using storage, proof of storage to
Yeah,
verify transactions. And for a bit when it was taking off, you saw like the prices on actual just hard drives skyrocket.
mm. I mean, what's amazing, like consensus mechanisms in like layman's terms, is literally just a way to confirm that you aren't committing fraud on the blockchain, and that's literally limitless. I was lucky enough to get like a peek into this coming project that isn't an NFT project. It's not associated with Web3, but it's using the blockchain and a new consensus mechanism called proof of physical work to basically monitor the physical labor behind recycling,
Really?
and then using waste IDs to like therefore you have a waste ID. It's created whenever you recycle something, and then everybody who contributes to turning that into usable material again is then registered as an owner of that waste ID. And in lots of nations, companies have to offset their waste production by like a portion of how much waste they produce. So say they produce 100 tons of plastic waste and they have to offset 10%. They have to fund 10 tons of plastic recycling. And what this proof of physical work does is it lets those companies buy those waste IDs off of the people who contributed to the recycling process, making sure that people get paid for recycling and creating a proper incentive to do that, which is insane. Like I believe it's focused around Brazil at the minute because there's
Mm-hmm.
a big push for like waste management going on in their government. But that's what I hang around in the space for. Is I love this application of something that's genuinely brand new and we have no idea what the limits are on it, and putting it into already existing industries, just making them better.
Yeah, I mean that's what we look at to Web3 in general for, right? Because essentially
Yeah,
what this technology should allow us to do is to quantify the world around us and give a method to manage the chaos in a way, right?
yeah. And this ETH stuff and like moving to proof of stake, it's supporting that, but it is like there's only we have no idea what this new system can do. Like even now, before the mergers even happened, you have companies like Coinbase coming out and announcing that if you stake your ETH through Coinbase, which with the energy prices rising, you may want to do because you can't have your computer switched on 24/7.
Oh yeah, we were just discussing that. I think California just put in like another like thermostat limit on there that you can only have like your AC running to a certain level and say, "Hey, don't charge your electric cars because it's taking a gigantic toll on the grid." We're like at a point in society right now where we are concerned about energy conservation more than ever.
Yeah, and in France they're putting a cap of like 4% on increased energy fees, and there's even debate about whether that's going to happen in the UK. But if you can't afford to have your computer on all the time, you certainly can't be doing proof of work. But thanks to proof of stake, you can now send in, even if you don't have 32 ETH to spend, which even in the crypto winter we've got now is what, £48,000. You can't afford that. You can still send in a small portion that can be pulled together. And obviously, there's other ways of doing it as well. We'll get into that in just a moment.
Mm-hmm.
But
Of course, yeah. There's pooling where you can join up with other users, create a pool, then you get a portion of the rewards that come with that. Because, like we said, right, miners, they're not going to get mining rewards anymore, but you still get rewards for being a validator.
yeah, and what Coinbase is doing is they're wrapping their they created a new, I think it's CB ETH is what it's being referred to as, which is just Coinbase wrapped staked ETH, which allows that investment in the network that gives you yield returns that you can then reinvest. And obviously, you've got APR versus APY.
Mm-hmm.
And you can then turn that staked ETH liquid because other people are going to want to purchase staked ETH and you can use it as collateral, that sort of thing. It opens up this whole new asset class within an asset class. Like I said, I'm an economics student. I'm a huge nerd for this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to open a whole lot of doors, but the one point that I am most excited for is how this will really welcome a lot more people into the ecosystem, right? Because there are people, of course, concerns, artists, creators, developers, and just the general public that might want to get into the space, but they've had concerns about it because of the energy cost to it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there's also with what proof of stake has done is it's reduced this barrier to entry into like the mining process and not the mining, sorry, the contributing to the blockchain process, which I know there's lots of noise about this going around in articles of whether or not the merge is going to help with gas prices. And in the short term, the answer is no. It's not going to change gas prices. But in the long term, you actually create a system where it's much easier to contribute to validating transactions, which means that in the long run, this will help with gas. Which is why there's been a bit of a back and forth because people are just giving the answer of yes, it is, or no, it isn't. When in reality, right now, it's not. But later on, it's going to slowly pay its dividends back to us.
Yeah, it's
great.
Like what we want to be looking at is like, what if you're in the situation where you are already, let's say, heavily invested in ETH, right? Do you need to do anything for this change whatsoever?
Absolutely nothing. Like the merge works on like this one flow. There's a diagram on, I think it's an article that you shared in our space that's just a guide to the merge. And it's just a little line coming into the arrow of ETH. And it's perfect. It's all that's happening is the consensus system is changing and all the transactions held on Beacon, which was basically used as like a proving ground, free for a little bit for this new POS model, is just going to become the consensus model for ETH in general. All of the previous transactions still valid, still held on the blockchain. All of the future ones will just be done through proof of stake. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to convert your ETH. Some people are calling it like ETH 2.0 and all that sort of thing. It's still the same old ETH. Nothing needs to change. You're just going to be able to stick it into a staked wallet and just let it grow if you want to. It's like a savings account for cryptocurrency.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that is something that we should definitely talk about, though. Is essentially, I understand that people who have already staked ETH, they have concerns. It's like, what if everybody withdraws all at once, right? And at least on the good news to that point is that withdrawals are going to be controlled to the point so the network doesn't just, blip out like that.
Yeah.
The algorithm has it all in mind.
Yeah, and there's also there's not much reason that would happen besides like it being an actual malicious attack on the network. Because if you have staked ETH and it's being locked away and you sort of want to get rid of it, that's liquid. Like you can just sell that staked ETH to somebody else if you're using someone like Coinbase or like anyone like that. If you're ever worried that your staked ETH you might need at some point, stick it into a liquid wrapped asset like through Coinbase. Again, I don't know if there's anybody else who's currently looking into doing this, but I presume they will be. The limitations of that mean that you can't move it off chain because obviously it goes to zero immediately, and then there's nothing you can do with that. But yeah, there's lots of avenues for keeping your ETH staked while still making it liquid. So there's there's not much reason that there would be essentially a run similar to what happened in BlackRock in 2008 in the UK. Like it's just, oh no, it wasn't BlackRock. It was another bank. It was the first bank that had a run happen on it in the UK, which was obviously very big news. But the volume of ETH that's staked behind this is probably enough to protect us from that. It is. I'm just trying to talk.
I'm pretty sure it's definite.
We're totally secure. Like the risks of proof of stake is like people lying, but again, nobody wants to lose £48,000 because they lied to put a transaction on the blockchain, and like a run happening and everybody liquidating their ETH, which there's smart contract. Not barriers, protections in place for that, and less reason to do so because you can have liquid staked ETH through exchanges. So it's a very, very smart little. I love stuff like this.
Let's.
Yeah, well,
Oh, and of course, for everyone in the room, considering that we're all here, we are an NFT project, of course. What about NFTs?
Same thing. Like there'll be literally zero change because NFTs are just tokens held on the Ethereum blockchain. That's the same as them. All of their prior transactions are going to be still valid. All of their future transactions will happen through proof of stake, and their current owners are just one of the previous transactions. You're just on the end of the transaction list for that specific asset, which when it was minted has been validated on the blockchain through proof of work. And in layman's terms, it was created using proof of work. It's been moved from wallet to wallet through proof of work. If you then move it after this merge, it's just going to be moved through proof of stake. Same asset, no changes whatsoever. It's again, like it's very smart. I'm a big fan of the way that they've done this. It's user end. You literally need to do nothing. Your assets are secure. You're safe, and you don't need to do any weird, funny business with like moving stuff about or signing smart contracts. It's just gonna work.
Yeah,
great. But Warren, you wanted to clear up the 32 ETH staking thing, which I'm not all that well versed in. So do you want to take us through that? The misconceptions about requiring 32 ETH to stake.
Yeah. So this is the point that's been like pretty much like misquoted the most, and it is plain as day on the Ethereum Foundation website, is that anyone is actually free to sync their own self-verified copy of Ethereum, aka run a node. No ETH is required. Not before the merge, not after the merge, not ever. So the 32 thing is basically if you want to become, I suppose what they call it is like a proposer on the network, but you do not actually need any ETH to even participate in the other verification process.
Yeah. So there's proposers and validators in this sort of thing. A validator is somebody who just looks at the transaction that's been created, says, yes, that's legitimate. I can see it's moved from point A to point B. And again, this will all run automatically on the computer. There are 3 bits of software that you will need to do this. I'd recommend using, first of all, I'd recommend looking this up on the ETH website, which we'll provide in our spaces later, and not clicking any of those links to download that software unless it is from the ETH website, because with more eyes on this now, with ETH staking, people are going to be trying any phishing scam they can, so be really careful out there.
Yeah, it's also remembering like that while we do put this caveat about the misconception on there, that if you do want the best returns, if you are planning on staking to earn validation rewards and all that, ideally running your own node would be the most optimal, right? But it's also worth considering that there's all kinds of other things that you're going to need to have to factor in there, because do you need to keep your node active? Is your ETH completely secured? Are you making sure that you're not processing fraudulent transactions? All these sorts of things that you need to make sure, because there are fees associated with this, right?
Yeah, it's from what I read through like the ETH white paper and like the stuff that they're publishing on their website, it's basically one of the issues is you need to download additional software to like let this happen, but it will be as automatic as mining is. Basically, like you don't. proving this and validating this. You don't need to be like sat hunched over your desktop clicking a check mark every time. It will
Yeah,
just
yeah,
be done.
yeah. Yeah, no, it's
Yeah,
nothing like that. It's just the
yeah,
biggest thing is that you are not going to be running a power hungry piece of, you know, hardware, is what it is.
yeah, exactly. And again, like most of this stuff in terms of like it's taken for like your usual user. For me, certainly, like I don't really want to set up my rig to go through the blockchain when I have it. So if I'm going to be buying staked ETH and I'm going to be going through staked ETH, I'm probably going to be going through exchanges, and then like giving it to them, taking a slightly smaller return, and that way my ETH can then also be liquid. Like I think this is probably the safest way of doing things, but it's also not the most decentralized.
Mm-hmm.
So if you guys are trying to keep your money safe, you're trying to keep it away from prying eyes or grabbing hands. The best way to do it is set it up on your own machine, and I'd recommend just going through the ETH website. They've got a lovely little diagram that just explains all of that, and I'll post that into our spaces.
Yeah, sounds great. I think that about covers all our topics. Just a quick show of hands, though. Is there anybody that wants to propose any questions or other topics? Or, Kieran, do you have anything on your mind?
Um, Not really. Like I said, this has been my hyperfixation of choice for the past week. I started seeing articles here and there while I was doing the R Spaces stuff, and I fell down the rabbit hole. I've been gone for a couple days. um,
It's a bit of a topic, but it's like it's in it's a little bit inspiring to just kind of think about what might happen in the future now that we've shed these energy concerns.
yeah, I mean, what's really impressive actually, something I do just want to draw attention to. Ethereum is going through billions of transactions like all the time. It's nuts. Yeah, we're in crypto winter, but still there are an insane amount of transactions on this. And the fact that they are able to literally just flick a switch and all those transactions don't even falter. They're just moving to a new chain like it's nothing is incredible. And what that means for like the blockchain and like our wider Web3 world is if we ever want to make the swap again, the team behind ETH has just demonstrated how to do it without a single interruption of service, which I can't name any other business that's able to do that. Like if M&S updates its website, it's down for 3 days. If Discord needs to update, it has a little like you have to go and click the download. It'll still work, but you've got to wait a couple seconds. It's even faster than that. ETH won't stop, and it will just work. It's incredible to think about. It means
I mean, that
any
is the
bug.
best bit of it, right? When technology works as it should, you shouldn't even be able to notice the friction.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's the biggest thing I really want to draw attention to is like the power behind this technology now. And with like I mentioned the recycling project earlier, this stuff when it is adopted by the mainstream, which this merge is going to help a lot, is genuinely going to change the world. It will change how we see everything. There's a new thing coming around. I think around the end of the year is it's projected for, which is soulbound tokens.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody like have a look into, which are tokens that will be minted to your wallet, and then you can't get rid of. So these can come alongside. These can come along with like certain actions in communities and bits like that. It can be a report button. Like it's insane if you've been involved with a certain project, or maybe I don't know, you've attended university like I'm currently doing. You could genuinely get a soulbound token put in a wallet, and that's your digital profile. And
Oh, I get it now. I get the naming
yeah,
moniker. It's like basically like soul-bound equipment in video games and stuff like that.
yeah, exactly. It's always so SBT soulbound token. It's soulbound to the wallet. It can't be moved out. And when you start thinking about this in terms of like a metaverse point of view,
Mm-hmm.
and people trying to create digital identities for themselves, that's going to go.
So
That's
it's
going
a
to go above.
quantitative measure for achievements and involvement in community slash your life.
Exactly. Like, and the application of that, like, that's just off the top of my head. The application of that is like limitless. It's insane. You could use it for DAOs for like being able to identify who's a reputable source and who isn't because of people who have posted, I don't know, clickbait, or people who have maliciously attacked DAOs or community projects, people who have, I don't know, done a rug pull. And you can constantly identify them. And the only option they have is swap wallets.
So we're looking at a kind of a twinfold thing, right? So where it's both rewarding positive action and also identifying bad actors and essentially making just a, a do not interact list of sorts with all these malicious individuals.
Exactly. And if you use, the reason I bring it up now is because soulbound tokens weren't really viable when you had the proof of work system, because otherwise, for every tiny little interaction you did, you'd have to mint a new token, which is like, it's fine if you want to use it for like a reputational thing, but that's expensive
Mm-hmm.
and hugely like consumes power like nobody's business. With
Mm-hmm.
proof of stake, no power. And like in my humble opinion as a third year economist, I think the reduction of the barriers to entry will bring down gas prices quite significantly. And worst case scenario, hey, we've got Solana, who I bet will follow suit with this proof of stake system.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure.
I believe that Solana wasn't Solana and both Cardano both already proof of stake. That's at least what I got.
I
I
think
need
they
to
might
recall.
be. I think I might be going nuts and thinking that they're proof of work. Either way, yeah. So I think this is wholly positive, and as long as like everybody knows not to click the sketchy links and listen to the bad people, like this should go smoothly and set an amazing example for the rest of the community.
Mm-hmm. And of course, always do your own research. If you're thinking about making movements based on this information and other stuff, do more research, be sure in your decisions, and
Yeah, we'll be posting links to like all the stuff that's like important and valid. Obviously, I'm doing a bit of research for this. I read through a few tabloids that I wouldn't recommend, but we'll be going in the more reputable stuff, like direct links to places on the sort white paper and places that you can trust and valid information.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sounds great. Well, everyone, thank you for tuning in. If you're listening to the recording of this, thank you for listening. We'll be catching you soon. Cheers.
yeah. Good luck out there, guys. Remember, stay safe. Don't trust DMs. Switch off your server notifications.
Cheers, y'all.
See ya.